It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together to share their testimonies, to inspire hope, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. Folks, it's time to wake up the lions. I have an absolute lioness with me here today, the warrior mom, as a matter of fact, who has an incredible story about how God's influenced her life, her daughters, and some of the battles that she's had to face and overcome. And I'm looking forward to hearing it. I'm sure you are too. The author of Warrior Mom Rising, a mom's battle plan to advocate, overcome, and thrive, and the founder of the Warrior Mom coaching program to go along with it. Folks, please welcome Jenn Robb to the show. Jenn, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Rory. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I appreciate you coming on here and being willing to share how God has impacted your life and all about your business and everything else. Why don't we go ahead? And I know we have a lot to get into, but let's just introduce yourself. Who is Jenn Robb? What are you about? And how'd you end up here?
We live outside of Dallas, Texas. I've been married to my college sweetheart for 25 years, and then we now have three beautiful kids. They're all big kids now. So we have a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, and then the baby girl who is 17. I never set out to be an author, like that was never my intention. But I think sometimes God has a funny way of saying, your way is not my way. And so I've been in medicine for over 25 years, and so I'm a nurse practitioner now. Um, but what I found is like when my daughter started struggling with mental health, like her anxiety and depression, and ultimately ended up with self-harm, God was saying, I'm not only going to use this for her, but also to kind of transform you, right? And so, what I've learned through the last 3 or 4 years of her journey is that there is purpose in our pain. We don't always see it, and we certainly don't always feel it or see it when we're in the midst of whatever mess we're in. Um, but that's why I say when God said, write the book, I was like, no, listen, I am not an author. This is not what I plan to do, but out of obedience to him, I feel like the message, it needs to be talked about, right? Like not just mental health, but that moms don't have to feel alone and burnt out and stuck in the struggle, right? That there is hope and there is ways to advocate and not only for your kid or for your spouse, but for yourself, right?
Right.
And then you can still thrive on the back end.
Interesting. I've heard you use the word advocate a couple of times. I mean, I that's a pretty powerful word. That sounds like you're not quite getting where you need to go, and mom has to kind of come in and be that warrior mom.
Right.
Is that kind of where the warrior mom idea came from? Was all the advocating that you had to do?
Right. So it's like, when our kids are struggling, especially when they're struggling with severe anxiety or depression or some form of mental health, right? They don't really know what they're feeling, and what I learned is that my daughter couldn't really speak up for herself, right? So she had to have someone step in and be her voice, but not just a loud mama bear voice, right? But somebody that I had to be somebody that was advocating for her, right? For her best interest. Um, and there's a lot when you're dealing with a child who is struggling, there's a lot of people that you want to see and talk to, right? Pediatricians, psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, all of those things. And I've had many women say to me, like, I don't know how to talk to those people. Like, right? Just whatever they say is what I feel like we have to do. And that's really not what you have to have, right? That's not what your child needs, right? And as the mama, you have to understand that sometimes you may have to change counselors or therapists several times to find the right therapist that's for your child, right? And just because a psychiatrist says they need to take these 5 pills, part of advocating and part of speaking up is like, what are we treating? Right? Are we trying to get to the root cause of why they're anxious and they're depressed and they're struggling with pain? Or are we just trying to put a band-aid on it? Right? And my background in medicine, I'm accustomed to dealing with physicians and other therapists and all that stuff. Right, that's second nature for me. But what I realized is that a lot of moms, they don't feel like they have a power or they can't say anything back. And that's part of being an advocate, right? Is that you
Mhm.
have to kind of step out of your comfort zone sometime and put and say it out there, right? You're not the right fit for my daughter. You're not the right fit for my son. And I'm going to go find someone who is.
Nice, nice. And we've been through a few things like that. Your words are absolutely ringing in my ears right now because there are times you're right where everybody wants to just sort of defer to the doctor and go, okay, well, if this is what the doctor says, and it's got to be correct because they can't make mistakes. But then you have to go, wait a minute,
Right.
just explain this to me because I don't know if this makes sense. I love that you're willing to do that. If I can go back just for a moment with your daughter's story. A lot of us are parents who listen to this podcast, of course. All my kids are grown and gone, empty nesters, so I get it. Um, at what point did you realize, hey, there was something going on? There's because mental health issues span a very wide, you know, uh, I don't know, swath of what could be wrong with a teenager. What made you say, hey, this is something that's not normal that we need to kind of get involved in, that we maybe should take notice of, that type of thing?
Yeah, and so it's totally hard. Like when you're dealing with teens, especially when you've had teens, like
Yeah.
that there's a whole gamut of emotions and personalities that come out with these teens, right? But for her, she was always kind of, she's the baby girl, right? So she was always the light, in the room. But when she started kind of really retreating inward, right? She didn't want to sit at the family dinner table. She didn't want to play family game night. She just wanted to sit in her room in the dark,
Mm.
right? Her grades, she was always an A-B student, and her grades really started plummeting. I'm talking C's, D's. Like she had no interest. Um, and Chloe is always been a competitive cheerleader, like loves cheer, has been doing it since she was 18 months old, right? And so when she said, I don't want to do it, and you're kind of going, hmm. And that's when, like, you have to kind of trust your instincts as a parent and say, something's not right. This is more than just normal teen behavior, right? We all know that
Right.
they're going to face different things and they're all going to kind of have their moodiness and their ups and downs, right? But when things are so far out of the norm for them,
Mhm.
it should send like a light bulb, like something is really not right, right? And so with her, and then her biggest thing came on the Christmas Eve of 2020 when we had discovered that she had started cutting, right?
Oh,
As a form of, I mean, it's a form of self-harm, but it's really a form of release for them, right? To try to get the noise to quiet in their brains and the emotional pain they're basically exhibiting in a physical form. And so she had started cutting, and I took her to the first counselor I could find that was open on Christmas Eve because I needed her to be in somewhere, right? And to really try to figure out what we were dealing with, right? And so we went through that kind of process where she kind of just told the counselor like what the counselor wanted to hear. But my whole goal was to try to keep her safe, right? After about 6 months to a year, we kind of figured out, she finally told us that she had been sexually assaulted by another peer. Okay.
oh
So
my
now we're
goodness.
dealing with real trauma, PTSD, all of the things, right? And I tell people this because I want people to know that, like, as a Christian, and she was raised in a Christian home, right? So, like, I think in our minds sometimes as Christians, we kind of get lost in this trap, like, bad things don't happen to us, right?
Sure.
And we were like your ideal white picket fence kind of family, right? Been married for a long time, three kids, involved in the church, involved parents in our children's lives. And so I tell that because I want people to understand that, like, just because you're a Christian, it doesn't mean that the walk is always going to be easy or the journey is going to be easy, right? But if you allow God to work through you in those times of your deepest pain, you can come out transformed on the other side, right? And I remember wrestling with God going, what are you doing? And why? Why is this happening to us? Why is she struggling? Why, how did this even happen? Right? Because she's my baby girl. We protected her far more than we did, even the boys. The boys had a little more freedom, but she was the baby girl.
Right.
And so and that just makes you human. But you have to know that somewhere in that God still has a plan, right? Um, so I tell you that just to kind of give you like the little backstory. But the biggest part of the journey happened on April 4th of 23 when Chloe had been doing better by all standards. And so she was homeschooled from her freshman year on. But she had been doing better. I had gone into the clinic to see patients, and I couldn't get a hold of her. And so my mama instinct kept telling me something's wrong. I'd called her 50 times, I'd texted her, couldn't get a hold of her. And so my two boys were in high school at the time, like right down the road. And so I said, leave the school. Don't check out, just go. They got home and they found her unresponsive, laying in her room, her face down in a pillow in a pool of vomit.
Oh, man.
No idea what had happened because there were no visible signs of anything. Called 911. They finally got her to arouse. We rush her to the hospital, and when they start doing all their lab testing in the children's hospital, we find out that her alcohol level was 4 times the lethal limit. Lethal.
Wow.
Now, Chloe's 100 pounds, right? She's this very petite, cheerleader. But what she had done was broke into a liquor cabinet that had two locks on it. But she was so determined that day to quiet the emotional pain and to quiet the noise that she decided to break into that liquor cabinet. So, you know, that's hard for you to understand, right? Like as a mom, like you did everything you could to protect her, but at the same time, she was determined that day to get into that liquor cabinet. It wouldn't have mattered if we had three locks or, and eight padlocks on it. She was going to get into that liquor cabinet because that's what she had determined she was going to do, right? And so as a mama, sometimes you have to step back and say, I'm not responsible for her choice, right? But how do I step up and support her and love her and speak life into her from this point forward, right? But we got home that night, and she was covered in vomit still, just covered. She was so physically weak, but also she was emotionally and mentally spent, right? She couldn't shower herself to get the vomit off of her. So I had to shower her. And I remember like it was yesterday, standing in the shower with her, washing her hair. Now she's 15, right? And washing her hair. And she's sobbing and she's crying. And she says, I'm sorry, Mama. I love you. And I'm crying and I'm like, it's okay. We're going to get through this. But in that moment, God said to me, literally, like it was just as plain as day, surrender her to me. That is hard for a mama to do, to surrender your child to God, right? We all think that we do this, right? Like that we've given our children to God.
Right.
But God said, Jen, as much as you love her, I love her more. Surrender her to me. And in that moment, literally, it was almost like the weight had been lifted, right? There was nothing that I was going to do. I had done everything I could do in my human power to try to protect her and to save her, right? There was nothing I could do. At this point, it was going to 100% be God have to intervene and take
Yeah.
care of her and pull her from the depths and the pits of hell where she was. Because what I had been doing in my mama control wasn't working anymore.
Wow. Okay. So you hear this from God. What does that mean to you? Surrender her to me, because there's a lot of, if you're not receiving that download, then it's not speaking to you. So you got that, you heard that. What did that mean to you in terms of, next steps?
Well, it was a sense of freedom, right? And kind of overwhelming peace. It didn't mean that all of a sudden, because I had decided to surrender my daughter to God, right? And that's hard for a parent, right? I mean, that's
Oh
our
yeah,
children, especially for a mama. I mean, you carry them in your womb, you've loved them, before they were even here on earth. But we have to understand that they're not ours, right? They're simply on loan to us, right?
right.
To from God to pour into, right? And so it was freeing because as a mama, I wanted to control the narrative, right? I did everything in my power to make sure she had the right therapist, the right psychiatrist, the right medications, you know, all of the right things because I could control it, right? And as long as she was in my little bubble, then she was going to get better and she was going to get, you know, she would be so much better. But what I realized in that moment was everything that I was trying to do. Yes, it may have been helping her, but it wasn't allowing God to truly fully work through her and in her. So surrendering her, it was part of me letting control go, right? It didn't mean that I washed my hands of it and I was like, well, you're up, God. I've done all I can do. That's not it at all. It still meant I took action steps, but he was now leading the way. And I could relinquish some of my control to allow him to work in her and through her.
Okay. So it wasn't how you approached the your mission. It was how you approached your job in this whole thing. Wow. About how far now, you said she's 17 now. So
Hmm.
you've been dealing with this for how long?
Since she was about 13.
Okay, so about 4 years.
Mhm.
Um, where in that time frame
She was
did this
about fif-
happen?
she was about 15 when that happened.
So about halfway through.
Hmm.
Was that the worst part? Did it get better after that? I mean, what's the next part of the journey?
Yeah, that was rock bottom. I
Okay,
mean, because when we were in the hospital in the ER, the doctor looked at me after he got her lab test back and said, by all accounts of the story, her laying face down in a pillow, a pool of vomit around her, and her alcohol level as high as it was, there is no reason that she should be alive.
right.
And as a mama, what are you talking about? That is
Yeah,
gut-wrenching, right? Because I mean, not only like I understood it from the medical standpoint, right? The risk of aspiration, suffocation, all of the things that were against her in that moment. But I knew that God had a plan for her. And so when he said that to me, there's no reason she should be alive. I said, oh, but there is a reason that she's alive. Right. And so after that, it was more intense counseling, right? I found that a very beautiful human therapist named Stephanie that was specifically trained in adolescence, but also in trauma, right? And she was trained in cognitive behavior therapy, which is a way of kind of retraining the brain. So for Chloe, that was EMDR, which is like a rapid eye movement technique that they use to basically bring all of the trauma back to the surface because our brain, the way it's designed, is to kind of suppress the bad things, right? If we can tuck it all away in there, then we don't have to feel it. But what that does is that later on, we still have triggers, right? Smells, sights, all those things, and it still triggers those bad memories to come up. Maybe not like in the most visible way, but it changes, right? Those traumas, they change our behaviors, our responses, our actions. And so with EMDR, cognitive behavior therapy, it retrains the brain to kind of heal that wound by bringing it all back to the surface and then replacing it with good memories and good thoughts, right? And so that they're not as triggered or they don't have the same response to sights and sounds and smells,
Right.
right? So, but for the person that's going through this therapy, that is very hard because they have to go back and feel everything is like it's happening to them again.
Hmm.
And so we had to do that with Chloe. And did she want to do it? Absolutely not.
That's
But
hard.
it was huge for her journey and for her healing because now she's a thriving 17-year-old walking into her senior year, right? She's still homeschooled, but she's a senior and she's on a competitive worlds team, right? In the cheer world. She's a
Wow.
level 6 cheer athlete, right? Which there's not many people that have been down that space. And so I can look at her and go, wow, right? We were in the depths, in the pits of hell. And now she's come out on the other side. Was it easy? No. It was grueling at times. But I can see how God has been in it and has transformed her through that process.
Wow. So God wasn't just at work with you. Your daughter was doing work with God as well.
Mhm.
And was that part included as part of her, quote, therapy, or was that in addition to what was happening with the therapist?
No, that was in addition to,
Okay.
right? I mean, we still stayed the course, as a Christian family, going to church, praying over her, speaking life into her. Um, but part of that just comes from what God was doing in her too,
Hmm.
right? I mean, and when you talk about like, when you think about like my book, right? The cover of the book has a butterfly. And that was all done very intentionally, right? Because that's what we went through. You think about the transformation that butterflies go through before they're a beautiful butterfly, right? They're this ugly caterpillar with its gross legs and whatever, and then it makes this nasty looking cocoon, right? That is so ugly. But in it, it's being transformed into something beautiful, right? And that's where Chloe has been transformed. Now, she doesn't mean that she's 100% like, I want to tell my story because she doesn't. She's not ready to tell what really happened to her and what from her side of the story. And that's okay,
Yeah,
right? She's 17, she's still young. My
sure.
hope is that God some days opens up the path for her that she will want to tell her story and how she can help other girls that were struggling with that. But that's not where she is, and that's
Right.
okay.
For sure.
But he also transformed me in that process and said, "Listen, there's other people out there that need to know that there's hope and that there's help, right? And that God is always there. We don't always see it, we don't always feel it, but he is there. He is in there in the midst of the mess. And if we surrender and kind of let go of some of the control, then we open it up for him to come in and move in miraculous ways that we didn't ever expect.
In terms of her work that she was doing with God during this time frame, was she getting help from the church? Was it coming through you as the vessel, or was this just her relationship with Jesus on her own?
It wasn't really through the church. Um, you know, again, I think, and I know I felt this way as a Christian, we didn't really talk about it, right? We weren't super open about it, um, like with everybody else, right? We talked about it. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay. So we didn't talk about it with everybody, right? We kind of kept it to ourselves. Because I think, I felt like there's probably a stigma, like people would want to judge her or judge us. Like, how did we miss it? What did we do wrong? But it wasn't anything that we had done, right?
Right.
So it was really, my husband and I pouring into her, praying over her. We had a couple of, close friends that knew that were very supportive in prayer, and that kind of helped intercede on her behalf. But most of it was she was working with a therapist. on a very strict schedule. It was bi-weekly and then it ultimately became weekly. And she doesn't actually see her now, unless she just needs her. But it was really just our family support of loving her and praying over her and always speaking life into her, right? That she was capable of more and that there was going to be a purpose in this.
Just need to pause it for 1 second. Let me, we have a horrible storm here. And so I'm trying to kind of change internet channels and keep us going. So that's why we have a couple little glitches, but we're coming through fine. I just want to
Okay.
try and move that. So give me 1 second, and then I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that. So, all right, let's see here. All right, I think we're back. You ready?
Mhm.
All right. So when you say that, there was going to be some good come out of this, is that kind of, what led to the book, is to say, hey, nobody should have to go through this alone and be trying to find their way the way you've had to?
Right. It was last fall that I really felt like God was saying, you need to write the book, right? Because there are people that are struggling. There are other moms and women and parents who are struggling with not only the mental health piece, and it doesn't have to be so niche down to mental health, right? I mean, I talk to women all the time that their children may be in recovery or it may be something with a spouse, but that there is community, right, in that, and that you don't have to go through everything alone. But I think also sometimes when we're in the midst of our own mess, we can't see sometimes a way out or a way up, right? We can only see the very tunnel vision that we're focused on is the mess, the struggle, the pain. And sometimes it takes somebody helping you along the way to say, okay, well, yes, you're in the struggle and you're in the pain, but can we find joy in small things? Can we be grateful in the small things to shift our perspective and our entire mindset about the struggle, the pain, right? Like, yes, it hurts, it's hard, but there's still little shifts that you can do, which is what I want other moms to understand, that in the pain and the burnout, in the grief, there's still joy, there's still things to be grateful for. You can still advocate for yourself or for your child. You can overcome and thrive.
Nice. So the book itself, then obviously it's educational in terms of what you went through and that type of thing. How it seems as though it's written to moms who are dealing with this sort of thing too, primarily.
Mhm.
But is it a particular difficulty they're trying to get over? Is it the same thing as your daughter? Who exactly are you writing the book to?
The book is really written for any mom who is in the depths of any mess, right? The
Okay.
book, it's part memoir because I use what we've went through and the grief and the pain that we went through to share, but to build a pathway that of community, right? And almost empathy and sympathy, right? Like that I know the grief, the pain, the struggle, but I
Sure.
also know the redemptive power of Christ, right? And how he has used that story and the mess that it was for good on the other side, right? And in the book, it is outlined so that you see the story, you can feel the pain, but you can also see kind of the healing process that came through the journey.
Nice. Okay. Is it written to Christian moms or is it anybody, whether they have faith or not? What's the faith component of the book? I'm just curious.
So there is a very strong faith component of the book.
Okay.
But I will tell you that I have had people that are atheists and agnostics read the book And all of them have said, even though they don't believe in faith or they don't believe in God, there were very strong points to the book that they understood and that they felt and that helped them.
Right.
So I feel like, yes, the book is very heavily faith-based, but it doesn't have, you don't have to, if you don't want that piece of it, then you can still take the very practical tips in it and use them and apply them.
Nice. Good for you though for I mean, including that. I mean, that was a big major part of what you leaned on and what helped you. So I mean, I'm glad to hear that you didn't take it out of the book, to like not offend somebody.
Right. No,
Yeah. Good for you.
definitely.
Good for
I
you.
mean, the whole goal of the book, right? Like when God says, I want you to do something, whether it's write a book, go talk to somebody, um, whatever it may be, right? Whatever God is telling you to do, the whole goal of that is to always bring glory back to Him, right? And that's my goal in writing this book and sharing the story, not to build sympathy, but to build a community of people that understand each other. But also, if there's somebody that doesn't know Christ, right? Or somebody who is struggling in their relationship with Christ and questioning all of the things, the goal is to always point glory back to God so that, right? Like that's what his whole mission is.
Right. Nice. Nice. Now you've built a coaching program, sort of around the book or based on the book. Tell me about that.
So it's kind of around the book, but again, it goes back to having a community and having women that you can rely on. So we do a lot of group coaching, right? Where we meet over Zoom because I don't want to limit it to just an area or, because we're all in different geographic places, but that women can feel connected and supported during that time, right? But still offering them very practical steps. And some of it is a lot of reflection, right? Like you have to kind of look inward and see, where are you struggling? Where are you burnout? Where are you at emotionally? Are you trying to just control the entire narrative and not allowing and putting up very strict boundaries and walls and not allowing God to move in that time? So the goal of the coaching is to offer community, but to offer support and then practical ways to navigate the situation that they're in. Because like I said, a lot of women don't know how to advocate. A lot of women don't know how to advocate for themselves, but
Right.
a lot of them don't know how to speak out against a doctor or a therapist, right? Like with Chloe, we went through three therapists before I found the right one for her. And it's
Wow.
okay to say, you're a very nice person and you have a very good skill set, but you're not the right person for her or him,
Yeah.
right? That's okay. We changed psychiatrists because I didn't want somebody that was just going to continue to push a pill after pill after pill on Chloe, right? I'm not trying to numb the problem. I want her to be able to function,
Right.
but her to get to the root so that we have true healing, not just a band-aid. And it's okay to say, thank you for your time and your service, but we're going to move along now.
Excellent. I mean, she's blessed to have you in that role. So that's wonderful. Um, the hmm, in the coaching program,
Mhm.
is that um, also coaching in terms of the faith-based ideas? I mean, do you work through that in the coaching, or is that something that you guys stay away from? How do you handle that component of it?
No, I want faith built into everything that I do,
Nice.
right? I don't feel like God called me to this mission or to this battlefield because that's exactly what it is. I don't feel like God called me to that to be like, well, we're just going to leave you out of this part of the story, right? The whole point of my mission is to bring glory to God. And there may be somebody that doesn't have a relationship with Him. That's the goal, right? Is to get everybody. on the same place with him,
Right.
right? We all have our struggles and we all may have to work through different things and how our thought patterns are about faith or how who God is. And that's okay. And like we can work through that in the coaching thing. That's why I say a lot of it is I ask questions or I have a course for you to do and ask those questions where you have to reflect inward. If we don't self-reflect and look really inward, then how are we ever going to move forward? Right? We have to say, okay, I believe this about God, or I'm emotionally immature when it comes to God. Then we can move forward, right? Because we can confront that head on. We can talk about it, we can work through it, and then we can move you on to the next step, right?
Nice.
I mean, a lot of this, I feel like when we're on the battlefield as parents, when we're struggling, when our kids are struggling, I do feel like there's this big component of spiritual warfare. I feel like sometimes the enemy is trying to take us out. If he can take out families
Right.
and he can then he wins, right? If he can take out the mom and make her feel burnt out, unworthy, guilty, shameful because she didn't see it, she didn't catch it, she didn't intervene fast enough. If you can take her out, then he's won.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was going to actually ask you about that next, and I love that you're there already. You've mentioned the battlefield, several times, um, and you're not shying away from your faith in any of the things you're doing, and I applaud you for that. Clearly, this has been an awful lot of spiritual warfare against you and your family. I mean, the good news to that is that clearly you're a threat, or they wouldn't be coming at you trying to stop you. But by the same token, when your identity's wrapped up in being a parent, then yeah, they go after the kids. That's exactly what they do. And
But
if
you
they
know, when
can,
you think about
yeah,
like spiritual warfare, like in it's what the enemy wants to do, right? It's
hmm
just to destroy. And I think this is why, like earlier in our talk, I said, like, I feel like sometimes as Christians, we get wrapped up in this, bad things won't happen to us,
hmm
right? We get so hung up on, well, and then we get lost in that, well, why are you allowing this to happen to me, God? Why? And we want to know like immediate answers and questions. And I think one thing that God has said to me over and over is I never said it was going to be easy. He never said one time anywhere in the Bible that just because you're a Christian, you're not going to have problems or troubles or pain or sorrow. He didn't say that.
right,
What he did say was, is I will be with you every step of the way. And I think, for us, because I mean, there was a very period in the beginning of all of this that I was angry, that I questioned God. What are you doing? We were the perfect family. We went to church, we taught our kids about you, we did all these things to check off the boxes, right?
right,
And you're allowing this? You allowed my daughter to be sexually assaulted? Are you kidding me? Right? Like that's the real part, the human that just says, "What are you doing?" But then when you come to that place and you can surrender and you're like, "Okay, I am out of human capabilities at this point. I've done all I know to do." And God says, I was there the whole time. I was there the whole time. None of this is a surprise to him. And I think that that's what's important, right? Like none of our pain, our sorrow, the story, it's not a surprise to God. It's a
right.
surprise to us. But in it, we have to stay rooted in our faith so that the enemy can't move forward on that battlefield. Okay. The goal is to keep pushing that enemy back. You can come at me, you can throw this at me, but my faith is rooted in that cross.
Yeah.
So good luck. Have you ever listened to Emerson Day, the music? There's an artist by Emerson. Her name is Emerson Day.
It's ringing a bell. I bet I've heard the music. I'm just not connecting it with the name. But
Okay, well,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
would encourage you and everybody else to go search her. Like you can see her videos on YouTube. But she's kind of like
Okay.
like a rock Christian country all in one. But she has this amazing song that says, "Get behind me." And I listen to this and like it's like you just like want to get fired up, right? Because she's telling the devil, "Get behind me. You have no stronghold here. You can come at me. You're the liar that's creeping in my thoughts and your and all of those. But get behind me because I am a daughter of the king. And
Nice.
the same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives in me. So get behind
Nice.
me." And it says, "You are under my blood-bought boots." So
Is
think
that a
about
lyric
that.
from the song?
It is.
I think I've heard it. Yeah.
It
I'm
is. I
pretty
mean,
sure
like
I've
I
heard it.
listen to it all the time. Like her
Yeah.
music is just,
That's a unique line. The
it
blood bought
is.
boots. Yeah, I think I have actually heard that once or twice, but I wrote it down anyway because I'm going to look it up for sure. But I mean, amen. I love your just your energy and the light within you and everything else right now, even after everything you've had to deal with. One of the last things I want to just kind of touch on because, in the interest of time and whatnot, you've been through it and you tell an amazing story. And I mean, God bless you and your daughter and your whole family for everything you've had to deal with. I'm so happy to hear that she's doing much better right now. And I do recognize this is the type of thing that doesn't necessarily just cure it, but, you know, um, congratulations on all those points. One of the things that we're called on is to, no matter how hard we're fighting everything else, is to build discipleship. And it sounds like you are so firmly rooted in that as well, with everything that you're doing through your book, through your coaching program, and I mean, even through coming on podcasts and talking the way you talk. You're not shying away from any of this.
Mm-mm.
So
I
you're
don't feel
on the
like that's,
battlefield.
yeah. I mean, I want mamas to know we are going to be locked arms on this battlefield, right? Like, and I even talk about in the book, put on your armor every day. I mean, it's in the book. I mean,
Hmm.
God calls us to put on our battle armor because he knows that we're going to be hit on all fronts. But if you stand with the helmet of wisdom, right, and the breastplate, then it gives you the ability to push back, right? And it's, I mean, like, I literally love her music again. And it says, "Get behind me," because he has an angel army. So we don't have to be afraid of the enemy's attacks because they're going to come. I mean, that's just everyday life. Life is always going to life, right? Always.
Right.
But when we stand battle ready and we know whose whose child we are, right? And who is standing there next to us in the fire, then it makes that easier. And we can rest in the fact that God is there and that he's got us, right? We don't have to have it all figured out because he already figures it out.
Right.
And I think that that's what's important because I know for me, like I'm a control freak to the nth degree, right? I mean, I can run a code in a hospital like nobody's business, right? But sometimes as a parent, we have to let go of some of that control. And that is hard. And
Yeah,
we have to relinquish that control to God and say, "You're going to have to take the reins in this because my child is struggling." And it may not be with mental health, it may be with addictions to drugs, or maybe they're being bullied and they're really struggling with the fear of going to school, right? And sometimes all we can do is try to help out and to advocate again for them. But sometimes we have to let go and just let God do what God can do,
yeah,
right? In the child, in us, so that we can find a new purpose in that, right? And sometimes as a parent, I just feel like you have to make hard decisions. But if you're making decisions that are backed by and rooted in what God would want and what God says, then you come out on the better side.
sure. For sure. I love it. I love everything you're talking about right now. And you just got such a power about you, that it's really contagious. I'm definitely going to look up this artist because as soon as you started talking about Emerson Day, I mean, you just like Pop.
I love her music. Like,
I can
right? Like,
tell.
I
That's
mean, because it's everything that we want, everything that we feel on the inside, right?
yeah,
And if you
that's
can
great.
say, not today, get behind me because you live under my blood-bought boot. And I think sometimes we have to take our power back, right? Because
Yes.
the goal for the enemy is to make us feel powerless and hopeless and useless. And if we can take that power back, he doesn't stand a chance.
Nope. Amen. I love that. Absolutely love it. All right. Where can folks find your book and find you?
So my book is on Amazon.
Good.
You can just search Warrior Mom Rising.
Okay.
You can also find my website is warriormomcoach.net. And on that website, I have free resources to help them. Um, I have one to specifically help the moms, and then one that is to help the moms help the teen
Hmm.
or the child. But all of my information is on there. They can reach out to me, they can email me from there, there's even a texting thing. My blogs are on there. Everything is on there for them to have access to.
Perfect. All right. We'll make sure all that's in the show notes. Absolutely. Let me just kind of leave with this. Any parting thoughts, last minute encouragement for the moms out there that are just still kind of feeling alone, other than, of course, buy the book.
By the book.
Yeah, right? Buy the
But
book.
you're
But
not alone. I
there you
mean,
go.
really, there is other warriors out there that want to stand with you. And that's the thing I love about community, right? We're there not only to support each other, but to pray for each other, right?
Yeah,
When you're struggling. So you're not alone. And there is purpose in this season. We just can't see it right now.
gotcha. Love it. Uh, Jen, love what you're doing. Absolutely, absolutely love what you're doing, what you're saying, and who you're trying to help. So, power to you, and all my best wishes to you, your family, your daughter, everything. Thank you so much for coming on and telling your story, and encouraging moms all over the place with this episode. It's been a blessing.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Jenn Robb, author, Warrior Mom Rising. Go look it up, check it out. She's a coach. You're not alone. And fantastic message. Absolutely fantastic message. The reason that we're doing these podcasts, folks, the reason that we're bringing these fantastic people on here is because it is time. It is time to wake up the lions. More than that, it's time for you to take your rightful place with your brothers and sisters and let them hear you roar. Folks, the world is ready. You're ready. You just have to believe it.